It's what you're doing, making me feel like I'm falling.
Hello, I have found a piece of glass. Well, it's been sitting in a drawer in my art room for years. I think it came from an old picture frame. Honestly, unclear. But I thought this would be a great way to take a stab at some glass art for the first time. I'm going to be doing this using Artistro brush pens, and I'll show you a really simple way you can turn any piece of glass into a decorative kitchen trivet. Which, if you're anything like me, that's extremely exciting, because I love kitchen trivets and decorating. Let's get started. The first thing I'm doing is taking out some Windex. We need to wipe this down and make sure it's nice and clean before we start painting on anything. Once that's done, we can throw away our paper towel, and now we have a freshly cleaned piece of glass. And our brush pens. Store horizontally. Okay, noted. On the back, there are the 16 colors. These are water-based, quick-drying, and non-toxic. 16 brush paint pens. Whoa! I whipped open the box. I was actually very excited to show you that there are 8 metallic colors and 8 non-metallic colors. I love this raccoon. I was almost gonna make a raccoon, but then I saw the front cover and it had a bird. I was inspired. Inspired by the bird, that is. So I set up my pens very nicely to the side. We're doing some aesthetically pleasing setups here. And I got to work sketching out a bird or two. I know the front cover actually had a hummingbird, and I'm clearly not doing hummingbirds, but I was inspired by the concept in general of birds. I do have another potential reason why I painted birds on this glass, though. I have a sliding glass door, and during this week, there was a bird that flew into it as hard as he could. He was stunned, sitting on my stoop for 10 to 15 minutes with his little beak open. I was so worried about him. I was like, oh my gosh, did you hurt your beak? Are you okay? He was just stunned. He eventually flew away. But I, of course, had to send a Snapchat video of this tiny bird to everyone I know because I felt so bad for it. My sister-in-law happened to be over this week. She saw the glass trivet and she said, wait a minute, did you paint birds on this glass trivet because of that bird that flew into your glass window a couple of days ago? And I said, oh my gosh, I think I may have subconsciously done this. So that's weird. I feel like I was on topic and now I've totally lost the thread of what I was trying to say. Ah yes, painting on glass. So I started off painting the birds, obviously. I sketched them out. But I also realized that I wanted to create some kind of flower arrangement that they were sitting on. Maybe like a nice tree. Maybe it's got some branches, and what I came up with was a red dogwood tree. It does slowly transition into orange flowers, which I don't know if that's actually realistic, so maybe this is just an unrealistic version of a dogwood tree, but that's vaguely what I was inspired by. After I got my base colors down, I took out this gold pen and added some gold streaks to the center of the flowers. At this point, each of the flowers and their colors are looking quite muddy. It kind of mixed weirdly with the blue. I feel like I probably should have painted the flowers first. It's kind of poor planning on my part. But I am just trying to get my basic concept down, and after that, it will get better. Really what I'm asking you guys is to reserve your judgment, because right now this looks like a horrible sketch of, I guess the birds look okay, but the flowers look weird, and it's just, when you paint things, even when you paint them with a pen, things look really bad at first, and they start to get better and better over the course of the video, and I feel like at first it looks like there's like a 2-year-old that sketched it out, and then it's like, okay, maybe a 12-year-old made this, and it's like, all right, maybe like a 15, 16-year-old, and then at the end, it looks like I made it, which I don't know if that's really an improvement, but it'll look better, hopefully. As I was outlining each of these flowers in black, I was looking at it and I was like, you know what, this needs some white. It's just a little too dark, there's not enough dimension here, everything got a little too muddy. So I filled in the chest of this bird first, and then I took out the white pen. I started off adding some white highlights to the edges of each of these petals, and then I started dabbing the pen. And I feel like that technique of dabbing the pen actually created some nice fold kind of looking things. Fold looking things. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. Like how, you know how flowers have wrinkles or different bendiness to them? The dabs are adding the bendiness, the texture. In summary, dab, don't rub. And that leads me to an important thing I learned about glass art this week. Let me start by saying this is not actually a criticism of the brush pens at all. These are multi-surface brush pens. They paint pretty well on glass. They paint well on many different surfaces like rocks, cups, plates, paper. They work really well, and I actually really love them. So I'm not criticizing the paint pens. I think these are probably the best paint pens that I have tried. I like them better than Posca paint pens, which is, I know, kind of crazy to say. This video is not sponsored by them, but if you're planning on trying it out, I do have a 10% discount code that you can use. Although I'm not criticizing these brush pens, I do have a criticism of glass art in general. I'm referring to the time I painted on plates. When you paint on glass or ceramic, things become very streaky. It's very hard to layer the paint in a way that you would normally layer paint when you are a painter. And as far as these specific Artistro brush pens go, they actually did layer pretty well when you were painting on glass. I was kind of shocked at how well it was able to layer. The trade-off with these pens, I guess, when you compare it to like regular glass paint, is that these pens are water-based, which somehow means that they're quick reactivating. So if you paint something down and it dries, and then you take another pen and you go to paint on top of it, the two colors actually mix together. And if you're not careful, the colors can start to become very muddy. However, I do like that it reactivates and you can mix it together because now you can create more colors with your brush pens. That's the one limitation of brush pens. You only have the limited amount of colors they give you. So it is really cool that these reactivate and you can mix the colors together, create new colors. You just have to be careful. It's a dangerous game. The nature of painting on glass is always going to be a little streaky, so I think I can forgive the pens on that. It's not like they're specifically meant for glass. They're just multi-surface. They go on like a lot of different things. So I forgive the pens for that. But when I think about glass art in general, it just makes me not really enjoy glass art because you're constantly thinking about the streakiness. I remember the streakiness element being my major qualm with my other painting on plates video. I used Folk Art Designs glass paint, and that paint, if you let that dry, God help you, because you cannot layer paint on top of that paint. It starts to crack and crumble and become just like this crumbly mess of paint. I did end up taking out my white Posca paint pen. The one thing that I needed was a very concentrated white, and I felt like the brush pens kind of kept blending in with the other colors and really not standing out. So I took out my Posca paint pen and just re-added those white outlines to the flowers, added the highlights to the bird's eyes, and I think it made everything pop. After that was done, I added my signature to the bottom left corner of this piece, and I rolled out my Krylon crystal clear acrylic coating. I was afraid to paint anything on top of this at first because, again, this is water-based, so I didn't want to smear it. Once the paint was sealed in with the spray, I took out my decoupage, and I felt more comfortable putting a thicker, whoa, that is way too much decoupage. Put some of that back, okay. I felt more comfortable than adding a hand-painted decoupage coat to really make sure that this gets sealed in. And now to handle the back. You can see that this is kind of streaky. It's kind of the nature of glass art. It just happens. So I am going to be decoupaging or Mod Podging a piece of printer paper onto the back of the trivet just to make sure that we have a nice solid background for our birds and we're not really seeing all of those streaks. So you can see I added the initial layer of the decoupage and then I added another layer of decoupage on top of the paper, dried it off, and yep, it's dry. I sanded the edges of the glass to make sure that everything was nice and smooth. And now it's time to really turn it into a trivet. This is such a simple way to do it. You just take a hot glue gun, add a thick circle of glue to each of the four corners. Let the dots mostly dry, but when they're a little warm, put it down on the table. It'll create a nice little foot for your trivet. And here we have the final result of my decorative trivet. Would I go into my kitchen and put some food on this and cut things on it? No. But it is a nice decorative trivet that you can put on a counter, on a shelf, etc. I like it. Is it the best thing I've ever created? Probably not. It's just kind of the nature of glass art. It's like a little streaky. It's not my favorite, but I had a lot of fun and I hope you guys liked it too. If you want to see me paint on more stuff, I have a playlist linked for that. Thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you next week for another video. Bye.